The election data as it correlates to Bitcoin is something I really want to dig a little bit more into. I talked about it briefly in the video the other day, but I really want to dive into this. Here's election right here, 14 days away. And what I'm about to show you, I think if you're a bull, it's enough to excite the bulls. So we're going to look back on the daily chart in previous elections, 2020, 2016, 2012, and we're really going to dissect what to anticipate in the next 14 days and beyond. And I really think if you're like me, you're going to like what you see. So hit the subscribe, hit the like on the way in. Let's jump into it. What's cool about this data is, yes, we're speculating here, but it actually plays into the shorter term charts that we're going to kind of end the second half of the video with, to really just discuss the technical move, the technical setup, even in the short term that is in play. So let's start here. I want to start zoomed out, and I just want to point something out to you just very briefly. It's just in relation to previous cycles. And I'm just going to take last cycle at this moment. This is last cycle where we were at this moment. You know, the Bitcoin halving in yellow, you see these yellow lines. These purple lines are significant because that's basically altcoin season beginning. But I wanted to point out on the RSI, this momentum oscillator, when Bitcoin was getting its break, this was like the break that we were waiting for this time around. When it was getting that break, Bitcoin was just entering into that overbought area. That was the beginning of the parabolic bull. Here's where Bitcoin is on the RSI. I just want to point this out. I think it's very important. And we're actually going to look at momentum on the daily charts in previous election years. But it's just important to note how much upside is actually set up for Bitcoin right now. Even you look at the stock RSI, the quicker momentum oscillator down here at the bottom of the screen. Last cycle, when it was entering the parabolic bull run, we were getting into that overbought area. This is just the beginning. That's what this signifies. And then, of course, we have the MACD crossing above the signal line. That you see that histogram just going green. I know I'm pretty zoomed out, but that histogram just going green right now. This is just so bullish on the macro. That's not an opinion, just from a data perspective. But let's start talking about the election. 14 days away, November 5th. I want to just very simply go through what Bitcoin did in the 14 days leading into the election day and beyond. The first thing I just very quickly want to point out is every single time, every single election year, here it is in 2020, from the moment of that Bitcoin election day, Bitcoin essentially was just up. It was up only. I did a video about this, right? That's what it looks like on the daily chart. And if you look at 2016, here's election day. We got November, where's November 5th? November 5th, right here, election day. Obviously some sideways, but this was it. This was the beginning of the parabolic cycle. And the same thing in 2012. It was the beginning of the parabolic cycle. So if we find November 5th right here, it never really went lower. That was the beginning of the parabolic cycle. But let's start talking about the 14 days leading into it, because this is where things become interesting. And it actually really helps us, I think, as a guide on the short term to anticipate, well, what could happen between now and November 5th? Because I think it's fair to say it's likely to be volatile. So if we start here, 2020, let's just note what Bitcoin did very simply 14 days before and into that day, right? So we're looking at around 12% gains, higher highs and higher lows on the daily. And then actually on November 5th was just a really massive green candle, really big breakout last election for the higher high trend that Bitcoin was in. This is the breakout that we're waiting for right now. Election day triggered it. So I can't say that for every cycle, but last cycle it did. So you can just see leading into it, and beyond, it was higher highs, higher lows. We saw gains on Bitcoin. Can we say that that's going to happen once again? Not necessarily so easy. And we can get some feedback from history to tell us, you know what, be prepared in the short term. And it's not so much 2016, because 2016 paints a similar story 14 days prior to the election. So from that candle there to November 5th, we're looking at around, 10% gains. You see a nice move for Bitcoin right there. Obviously, it went higher, but it consolidated right before the election, a couple days before the election. It consolidated, but higher highs, higher lows. But it's 2012 where we just get a little bit of a reality check. And what's really cool is it plays into the shorter term technical analysis that we're going to look at in this video. So check this out. 14 days before the 2012 election, here's what we have going on. Well, let's see. Where's 14 days? 14 days is up here. Bitcoin around 11 bucks. And election day, right, we're looking at right here, November 5th, around 10 to 11 bucks. But you see that drop off, right? Within that 14-day range. And that's what's important because we're in that 14-day range right now. But you can see a nice big dip of 15+%, 16% to the downside. We get a bounce. And then the story does remain that it's higher highs and higher lows after election day, right? So that's a consistency that we're going to apply to this cycle and see if that plays out. But I think this reality check comes into play when we're like, all right, 14 days before elections, there was a dip, 15%, 16%. So if we go and we look at this chart now, we have a couple things. November 5th, historically, every time, and I know it's only been 3 times, but from this moment, this election day, that's what this is, November 5th, Bitcoin historically has just been higher highs and higher lows. And that's in an environment where maybe Bitcoin pumps and we're at election day and it's 72,000. From that moment, historically, even if it's a little sideways or choppy, it's the beginning of the parabolic bull cycle. But what's really cool is that 2012 cycle, that reality check gives us a little bit of a sense of, you know what? Maybe we have some volatility in between now and November 5th in the next 14 days. And it really plays into what we've already been discussing, which is the possibility for a dip. Put aside elections. And that is this. Where we've broken out of this upper end trend line. It's the upper end of the falling, broadening wedge. We're right now testing it, which is insane to watch. Just this almost immediate throwback. Didn't get any separation. We're testing immediate support right now around $67,000, just above $67,000. But it's the question, if it falls, and maybe we get a 2012 consolidation before elections, what's the support look like? And here's where things are cool on the daily, and then we're going to take a snapshot on the weekly, even back then in 2012, compared to this weekly chart. So check this out. We've been talking about the moving averages. The 20 is around $64,500. The 200 is around $63,300. And then the 50-day is around $62,000. That whole entire area is an area that I think is just a good idea to anticipate a throwback, some type of higher low for Bitcoin in that general region. But I made a note of what is right here. And what's right here is significant. If you go to the weekly chart, what is right there is a throwback to an incredibly important macro cycle, multi-cycle support area. That is the 20-week moving average in green. That's 62,000, just above 62,000. And so on the daily chart, this is what it looks like. It's like right there, right in our confluent area of support, maybe a higher low support. But more intriguing is, what if that happens this week? Maybe it's next week before elections, and we're making a move to that area, and then you're like, all right, what if it is higher highs and higher lows from that moment on after the consolidation, because it's right where the elections are, and then we're bouncing into the parabolic bull cycle. We get a very similar picture zoomed all the way out on the weekly chart, going back to that 2012 cycle. And what I'm talking about is this. Here is November 2012. You see it? We're on the weekly. I know it's kind of, there's not much going on there on the weekly, but what's important to note is what's happening here. We looked at the dip on the daily, but what's happening in this area is important. That's 20-week moving average support. And maybe that dip, I don't know, maybe the dip is actually right there. But what was happening? 20-week moving average support. And so we might be in a similar environment right now, getting ready to enter that parabolic bull. Maybe the consistency will remain. And it is, after election, going to be higher highs and higher lows into the parabolic bull cycle. I know all of us bulls would really enjoy that. But maybe part of that story, similar to 2012, is some type of fall, right? Back to the 20-week moving average. And to give you a sense, that's a $5,000 dip from where Bitcoin is right now as I do the video. We're looking at around just a 7% dip. And the question is, does it hold support there? If Bitcoin does fall, does it hold support? One thing I know is we get this all this structure formation and consolidation that's happening right at the end over here. And what I mean by end is all this consolidation. This is part of a very large right shoulder setup for an inverse head and shoulders, as many of you know. So this is part of a very big story. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder trying to set up. So maybe we have to go down and consolidate more, higher, low. What does support look like at the 20-week? But this data, the election data, is so intriguing to me, especially if you watch my videos. You know I'm a macro person. I'm always analyzing historical data, whether it's charting, whether it's on-chain metrics, whether it's events and things that are happening like elections. And the consistencies that keep just appearing on these charts and throughout these cycles has been crazy. It's been crazy to track. So I'm excited really to track this in the next 14 days. And time will tell, and we'll see what happens. But I really wanted to present that data for you. I think it's something to think about in the next 14 days, because it really does, if you look at a daily chart, it allows for, hey, maybe like previous 2 cycles, we kind of see some higher highs and higher lows into the elections. Or maybe we dip like 2012. Either way, it allows for just typical technical analysis, which is to say anything can happen. We have our targets, and we just need to anticipate everything, visualize it, and just kind of zoom out on these charts. And that is the thing, everybody. Zoom out. I draw your attention once more to the momentum on these charts, the momentum of where we are in the cycle and how it lines up so nicely with previous cycles, of how we have so much upward momentum for Bitcoin in play if the bulls do step in and deliver another parabolic bull run. So these are my thoughts today, everybody. I hope you're doing well out there. Please, if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe. I try and do daily content for you all, Bitcoin analysis, crypto news, all that good stuff. So hit the subscribe, turn notifications on, hit the like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.